But this is the top 5 toughest Big 12 schedules, in my opinion. Just going through it, and I've spent way more time on it than I probably ever would, based on everything that we've been through here. But with the way I wouldn't think about it, but I looked. Texas Tech has very few home games, and they don't have back-to-back home games. I'm sorry. That is what it is. I closed the tab on my schedule here, and I feel like an idiot. But Texas Tech is number 5. They don't have back-to-back home games the entire year. After Oregon and Tarleton State. After that, they're every other week the whole year, as where many other teams in the league have either a couple patches of back-to-backs together, or like Baylor that has their first 4 together and 5 of their first 6. And while that's probably not that big of a deal, I do think that gets hard down the stretch of a season where you don't get 2 weeks in a row at home, where it'd just be nice not to have to get on a plane, figure out, are some guys can come to this one? Do we have to leave some home? It's just better, especially a team that has such a great home field advantage like they do, not to be able maybe to carry that momentum. And that was also a team last year that, until the end of the year, didn't win on the road. So not getting to do that 2 weeks in a row could be a challenge for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have, the first 3 that they'll be able to enjoy. And then it's off to West Virginia for Big 12 play, and we'll kind of see what shakes out from there. But they'll be, in Morgantown, in Waco, in Provo, and then in Lawrence and in Austin. So that'll be, dicey potentially. I mean, they were 1-4 last year when it came to road games. So they feasted on the home schedule. Oregon being the second week of the year, they'll be 1-0 after beating Wyoming. But, who knows how that game goes. I think that'll be kind of like Baylor and Utah. That'll kind of take you to the left or to the right, right there at the beginning of the year. So I'm definitely looking forward to Red Raiders and Ducks. But, yeah, they should enjoy it. And, I mentioned with Baylor yesterday, that their first month basically is at home. And so then after that, they have the benefit of those 8 games, but you really got to take advantage of that home schedule. And so, yeah, that if they can win on the road more consistently than they did in year number 1, they should be a very good team that's in the 9 or 10 win range.
Who's that?
Texas Tech.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That they should be in the 9 or 10 win range if they can correct the road stuff. But yeah, easier said than done, obviously.
Number 4, Kansas. They are resurgent. Obviously got to a bowl, but BYU at home, Texas on the road, UCF at home, Oklahoma State on the road before the bye, and then Oklahoma right after the bye at home. But closing out with Tech, Kansas State, and Cincinnati, that's pretty tough. I mean, to me, I think that the way that theirs flows as far as who they've got to play, where they've got to go, is really tough. And that's not even to mention that they do host Illinois at home to start the year, and that's a very, very good defense and a really good team from the Big Ten last year, or a pretty good team from the Big Ten last year. That's going to be tough for Kansas. It should be fun, but again, I don't think they got dealt any favors here with this schedule. In year 2 of Lance Leipold trying to make this good.
I mean, I don't think there's any layups when you're Kansas anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the case for a lot of the Big 12 now, is there's not necessarily a layup because I feel like that everybody's layup was Kansas at one point in time. Maybe it's more of West Virginia, but that's not even a layup because that can depend mightily on, are you playing them on a Saturday at 2 p.m. at home, or are you playing them in Morgantown on a Thursday night? Because that matters, and that mattered last year, as we saw when Baylor went out there and had to play on a Thursday night in Morgantown. But Kansas doesn't play West Virginia. They don't have them on the schedule. But what they do have is after the Nevada game, basically no given on the entire schedule. Yeah. I mean, BYU at home, you'd think they should probably win that game, but are you going to put your next paycheck behind that? Absolutely not. At Texas, UCF at home, I think UCF's going to be pretty good. I think John Rice Plumlee is going to be problematic for some people. At Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, At Iowa State, I don't know. The Cyclones are the wild card here because I have no idea what to expect from them. Like, are they going to just resort to being kind of middle of the road, or are they going to be the team that was contending for a Big 12 title a couple years back, or at least in that mix for a little stretch? Texas Tech, K-State, and at Cincinnati to close. Yeah, they're going to really have to take care of their non-conference schedule, and then and we'll see from there. But that's going to be a very interesting road for the Jayhawks.
Well, speaking of Iowa State, the team in Iowa that will have a new offensive coordinator, Iowa will not, because Kirk Ferentz doesn't need your pity. Absolutely not. But Iowa State, to me, third. They've got Iowa, which, look, they just finally got over that hump last year, and it took historically bad offense from Iowa to make that happen. Then Oklahoma State, Oklahoma on the road. And this is where, to me, it gets dicey. You got TCU at home. Then you go on the road to Cincinnati, which we don't know about Cincinnati. Then Baylor, Kansas, BYU, Texas, and Kansas State to close the season. That could be a gauntlet for Iowa State down the stretch.
I see 2 for sure wins on their schedule, and that's about it. I would think that you go ahead and put your money down on them beating Northern Iowa and Ohio. At Ohio, though, that's interesting. But Iowa, that's always a toss-up. They finally, were able to win that game, and then they turned in one of their worst records in years. So it's like that game didn't matter at all, or wasn't foreshadowing, success just by beating the Hawkeyes. But, yeah, I don't know what to make of them. Is this just we rolling with Hunter Deckers and, replacing some of these NFL guys just like it's nothing, or is that going to be something that not having your Will McDonald's and those types of players, and obviously reeling from not having your Brock Purdy's anymore, and players like that, how much can they replace, and how quickly can they kind of get back to where they were the last few years as opposed to last year? But yeah, that's a toughie. That's one of those that I think you're trying to figure out how you make a bowl game with that schedule right there. If I was an Iowa State fan, that's exactly what I'd be doing. I'd go 1-0, maybe 2-0, maybe 1-1, 2-1 or 3-0, and then after that, who the heck knows what that turns into? Yeah, absolutely. Number 2, BYU, and we had Kalani Sitake on the show yesterday, and he did say, they've been kind of playing schedules like this for a while, but even still, Arkansas and Kansas back-to-back, kind of weird. Those guys, 2 played an epically great bowl game to watch. But Arkansas and Kansas, both on the road. Cincinnati at home, the bye. And then they close out TCU, Tech, Texas, West Virginia on the road after Texas on the road, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. But that little 4-game stretch of at TCU, home for Tech, at Texas, and at West Virginia, and that's a drag right there. That's tough. That's a lot of miles, especially that's the 2 furthest corners of the conference playing each other, and that's a long haul after you've already gone to Texas 2 times, and now you got to go all the way across the country after the bye. So there's not even a bye in the middle of that travel. It is after their bye, and then they just hit it hard down the way. Yeah, they should beat Sam Houston and beat Southern Utah. And then after that, at Arkansas, at Kansas, and Cincinnati on a Friday night in Provo. That should be a raucous atmosphere at LaVell Edwards Stadium, getting the Bearcats on a Friday night. So that'll be unique. But as I wrote, that's one of the things that I looked at was what are the Thursday and Friday games? Because those things are crapshoots and just wild cards on your schedule. Like I mentioned, the Morgantown game on Thursday. Baylor also played Black Friday in Austin, and that can throw you off a little bit. So that Friday against Cincinnati is not too much of a departure from the norm, but it'll make for a unique setting, like I said, and should be a pretty big broadcast. But yeah, that second half of the year is looking to, 3 of your first 4 games are on the road, and the one that's not is Texas Tech, and we know that they're going to be pretty salty and tough. So, in Fort Worth, in Austin, in Morgantown, and then Oklahoma and in Stillwater to close the year. They didn't give them any – they gave them a great schedule for traveling. If you're a BYU fan, you love this schedule because you can go check out a bunch of cool places, or some new digs that you're not used to. But it's going to be a real tough, especially that second half for Kalani Sitake and company. All right, and number 1, West Virginia. All right, maybe just keep count of the games and we can go over it after I run through it. Tell me which of these games they're definitely going to be favored in. Penn State, no.
Duquesne,
yeah.
Pitt, maybe.
Maybe. That's the maybe. Yeah, I've seen some West Virginia fans expressing some confidence with that one, and I've seen some just flat out chalk it up. But I don't know what we're dealing with here with people.
And that's a crazy big rivalry, but still. But that's a maybe. Tech.
No.
Even at home, no. TCU on the road.
No.
At Houston on a Thursday night against a head coach who hates you.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of Houston just yet. But, yeah, on the road with Dana wanting vengeance on a Thursday, like, again, that weird playing not on a Saturday, it always seems to matter to some extent. So, yeah, that wouldn't be probably, if they're going to be favored, it won't be by much, you wouldn't think. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And, again, that's just one of those things that's a factor that if I'm West Virginia, like, all right, the guy that we fell out with and he left us to go there and there's all this bitterness, we're kind of reeling afterwards. Dana Holgerson would love to be the nail in West Virginia's coffin. He would love it. Oklahoma State, and again, that's no, but it's probably more than likely. UCF on the road, they will not be favored in that game. John Rice Plummet, they will not be favored against UCF on the road. BYU at home.
To be fair, Oklahoma State's got plenty of questions too, but I mean, I feel okay with Alan Bowman, and I think they'll be all right eventually once the portal settles down, but that's not as dangerous maybe as it typically is, but I still think they're probably better than we're thinking they're going to be. So, yeah, I would still favor Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, Gundy's still a good coach. He still can figure these things out. UCF on the road, like I said, not going to be favored. BYU, probably not going to be favored in that one, even though it's at home.
Probably not. Yeah.
Oklahoma on the road, not going to be favored. Cincinnati, probably not going to be favored. I don't know. We'll see that one. I don't know.
A lot of it depends on who they are by then. Yeah,
the new schools, we just don't know. Yeah. Like, I mean, I feel the most confident in UCF adapting the quickest. I think because, quarterback, and I just think that they're set up pretty well. But, yeah, I mean, BYU did not have a great year. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati didn't have a great year. They still won, 8 games, though. So they were, I mean, considering all that they were dealing with, that wasn't too bad. But I do think BYU, how good they are, how good Cincinnati will be, and how good Houston will be are all question marks. And to what extent UCF is good, I don't know either, but I just feel the best about them as far as the new schools
and
go.
Especially in comparison to where West Virginia is right now compared to where they are. Yeah. Like, they're ahead of West Virginia right now. I mean, they know who their quarterback's going to be. They've got a head coach who's going to be there. Like, they know that. Like, this is – if I was setting up a schedule to make sure that I was coming back, if I was Neil Brown, it would not be this one. And, again, he doesn't have the say in it, but this is certainly the – it's going to be, if he makes it through this one really well, then absolutely you should keep him because it is tough.
Yeah, well, it sometimes it's not quite like the NFL where you never know what a team is the next year. In the Big 12, we've seen that, though, with Baylor 2 years ago, TCU this year, and so who knows? I'm not saying that's going to be West Virginia, but maybe they're just slightly better. A couple of the teams are a tick down, and they win a couple of games they're not expected to win.
Yeah, they're not going to jump up and be in the title game. No. I feel very confident in saying that, but they could, they can definitely be a bowl team, which they were not this year. I think a lot will depend on that Pitt game in week 2 or week 3 and whether or not – because I don't really have any faith in winning at Penn State. I mean, I think that's going to be a top 10 team entering next year. So, I don't feel great. But that Pitt game, the difference between starting potentially 0-3 and 1-2 and then heading into Big 12 play and knowing you got Tech, TCU, at Houston, et cetera, coming down the pipeline. Yeah, I think that Pitt rivalry game will be massive for a lot of different reasons. But, Neil Brown does not have the easiest of schedules to try and cool down that hot seat.
All right. Thank you, all of you in the